So there's two kinds of review today. The review of the basic 20, which is things like 4x plus 5 graph. If you had to graph that, a ton of kids ask me about, how do you graph these again? I can't remember how to graph these. Well, if you're good at this, you should be able to make a sketch and just go like, oh, I know the y-intercept, and I know what the slope is, and so I can make another dot. Easy peasy. Let's see if you remember this. This is Algebra 1. Try it right now. Headphones need to come out. All right. And I know for some of you it's like, I don't remember this. Well, that's kind of important because of where we're going. I just looked at our chapter 4 test, which like graphing is just like one little part of it. You have to graph them and then you have to shade on one side of the line and you have to write the equations. And the graphing is just like, well, duh, you got to be able to graph. So let's see if you remember. Of these two, do you remember that this one was the y-intercept? How many of you knew that that was 5? Okay, good. And then the slope is this one, and slope is a rise and a run. So it's a 4 and a 1. Does that ring a bell? You remember that? So the 4 is the rise. So from this spot, you would rise 4 and then run 1. You always go up and you always go to the right unless there's a negative. Okay? And then you just go down and to the right. You always go to the right when you run. Okay, so this rise 4 and run 1 would mean there's a dot like right there. It's a really steep line, and that's what it should be. And there you go. So that's just one of those algebra topics that's on the basic 20. And I would bet right this second that only half of you had that exactly right. And we got to get that up to like 100% of you. I gotta be able to give you an equation and you know how to graph it. It's gotta be like automatic. All right, another one of the skills on the basic 20 comes in handy, and that's finding a few points on this thing. Would you make an XY chart like this? And then I just need a few points on this. This is Algebra 1. You are in Algebra 2. We've got to be able to like, oh, points? That's easy. I stick in any number I want. Like 0. Everybody put 0 on your graph like that, 0 on the chart, and then figure out what do you get when you put in 0. 0 for the x means it goes right here. Do you get that that means y equals 0 plus 5, which is y equals 5. 0, 5, does that make sense to you? 0, 5 is on the graph. It's right there. Should make sense to you. All right. And then if I put in a 1, you can put a 1 right here. Then y equals 4 times 1 is 4 plus 5 is 9. 1 goes with 9. And that's what we graphed right there. Are there more points? Yes. You could put in -1. Everybody without my help, put in -1. Figure out what the answer is. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to compare with the kid next to you. Like, I got 6, or whatever you got. Okay, in this case, it's going to be straight across, straight across, straight across, straight across. You guys are a little group of 3. All 3 of you compare with each other, okay? And these 2 rows, it's just straight across. Really simple. You got to park them straight across from you. It'll be you 2 guys. You're going to compare from a distance, just like you right there. Okay? And then, all right. Once you stuck in -1, what'd you get? Compare with them, please. -1 goes right here. This becomes -4 plus 5. What is -4 plus 5? It is 1. Raise your hand if you had 1. Okay, good. I feel like you're tracking with me then. Those are basics. And yet, honestly, if I just had given you this test cold right now, there would have been at least a third of you, at least, that wouldn't have gotten one of those. At least. And we got to get that up to everybody knowing these. So we'll work on some of those basics, and you'll have a partner to complete that. Hopefully by now, we're getting close to like a lot of kids in the teens for the basic 20. So out of 20 algebra questions, I expect you to know something in the teens, like high teens, hopefully. The average is still not great, but we can get it there. The other thing is if I just give you some points, you got to be able to tell me if it's a function. Do you remember this deal? If I put in 5 and I get 6, and then I put 5 again and I get an 8, and then I put in a 6 and I get an 8, and I put in a 7 and I get an 8, all of this was fine. But this means it's not a function because the same input had two different outputs. Think of it as a pop machine. If you type in a 5 on the pop machine after you put in your money, you would expect it to only give you one kind of pop. This gives you a 6 and an 8, which is like one time when I pressed 5, I got a Diet Coke. One time when I pressed 5, I got an orange. That doesn't make sense. You're supposed to get the same thing, all right? So one input gives you two different outputs. That does not pass the vertical line test, and it is not a function. Let me just show you what happened if you graph it. Over 5 and up 6 is here. Over 5 and up 8 is right there. Over 6 and up 8, over 7 and up 8. Do you get that the problem area of the graph is right there where you put in 5 and you got two different things? Does that ring a bell? You remember this? So that's saying it's failed the vertical line test. So some of your problems today are going to be like that, where they're going to give you a graph and you'll be like, is this a function or not? And it's not. Because when I put in like an input of, let's say that number right there, which is 6, it gives me two different outputs. If that ever happens, not a function. All right. So the last thing is reading charts and graphs, and these are the toughest ones. Don't copy this chart down, but I'm going to ask you a question about it in a second and see if you remember it. All right. So if I gave you this chart and I asked you f of 1, would you know what to do? F of 1. Well, I hope you know you're in the F column. And you got to do something with the 1. And isn't this where the X is? And so didn't I, by putting a 1 there, tell you that X was 1? Yeah. So here's F of 1. See? This is where the 1 was, and you just continue it across, and it overlaps at 3. Who was thinking 3 before I said it? All right, good. Would you please figure out G of 3? Don't say it out loud, but just write this on your paper. G of 3 is what? Just humor me. Show me that you know the easy kind. G of 3 is, and please compare that to the kid next to you. G of 3 is what? All right, G, which is right here, there, of 3 gives you 10. All right, how can they get harder? What if I said G of I don't know what is 10? Do you get that I can tell just because this is written right above it that the answer must be 3. G of 3 is 10, because we know, because we just did it. But what if I didn't just do a problem that told me the answer? All right, so I'll give you one that's like that. You ready? F of I don't know what is 4. You'd probably have a number in your head, or you're lost and you need help. Either way, talk to the kid next to you. What's X? If you don't know, ask.
How do you say it though? F of 2.
All right, I heard a lot of people saying 2, and you were right. It is 2. Let me explain why. Because we want to know what this is. And some kids think it's 2. Let me show you. Is f of 2? You know how to do that kind, right? If I give you f of 2, f of 2 gives you 4. So if you wrote it, f of 2 is 4, I'd be fine with that. Or if you just said, oh, you wanted x, x is 2, you could have just said x is 2, and I would have accepted that answer either way. Does that make sense to you? All right, now I know some people are still a little shaky on that. I want to do one more. If you understand them, they go fast. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more fast example of that. And see if you got this. F, nope, this time G. G of, I don't know what, is 8. All right, G of what is 8? G of, say it if you know it. G of what? 2. And look at that. If you didn't understand it before, look at it now. G of 2 gives you 8. See? So x must be 2. Because G of 2 is 8. All right, that's the hardest kind. Now, some review. So this is the part where we're going to start with nothing on your desk, just a blank piece of paper that I'm going to hand you. You just need a pencil. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, we have finished up the basics, the 20 most important algebra basics. I'm telling you, they are critical. They're going to come up all year long. Some are easy, I know, and some you forgot. But you got to know them all. Just like you got to know all the basics of basketball when you learn to play basketball. You got to know how to dribble. You got to know how to pass. You got to know how to shoot. You got to know to stay in bounds. There's a lot of little rules. You got to know all of these things to have a chance in Algebra 2. And I think some of you, once we get these things fixed, you're going to be like, dang, I'm actually really good at math. Because if you get all these things, our tests become easy. And if you've had struggles in math before, like maybe some of you have, then this might be why, because you never really got these down. Okay, so the new thing is there's a worksheet that I'm going to open up in 2 seconds here, and it's going to give you a bunch of points. But they're written like this, which sometimes throws people off. So if you had this, can you tell me right now, is that thing a function? No, it is not. Because what told you there were not?
2 is equal to 2 answers.
Yeah, this gave you a 3 and this gave you a 7. So that is not a function. Or that's how the worksheet starts. All right, I'm going to release that thing right now. I'm going to actually ask you for both this and we're going to cut a bunch of problems off that worksheet right now. I'll tell you which ones we're going to cut. This top 20, you're doing them all. The other worksheet, we're going to cut it down. So pausing. Okay, so here's what the worksheet looks like, and I said to do the odds. So for example, on this first one, is this a function or not? And I just look and see if I ever got inconsistent results. Did I ever put in a different, or put in the same number and get a different answer? Was there ever a inconsistent result? Nope. So that's a function. Number 3. Can you guys name the spot that was inconsistent? You put in an input and you got different outputs. What was the input that gave different outputs on number 3? There was a repeat of an X, and then it gives a different answer. Put a little box around the 2 minus 1, or the 2 comma minus 1, and the 2 comma 7. Do you get that that's the same input but a different output? So that one is not a function. All right, remember we're doing the odds, so you're looking at number 5 here. Any inputs that repeated?
No.
Then it's a function. Notice I don't even have to look at these. I had to just look at the X's and go, is there any repeats? Because if there were, they better be consistent. And there wasn't any repeats. So then that's a function. It's like innocent until proven guilty. I didn't have any evidence that this was ever inconsistent, so it must be fine. Number 7. Imagine you're drawing a vertical line through all of these points. Was there ever a moment where there was a double hit? Nope. So that passes the vertical line test. So number 7 is a what? It is a function. If you put f of x, that means it's a function. All right. Number 9, function or not? Not. Why? Because it doesn't pass a vertical line test. You can see it touches twice. If you put in an input of like -3 or -4, it touches twice. All right, I don't want to do your whole worksheet for you. Then over here, I am going to cut out some of them. We're going to cut out every other one like this. We're going to cut out the second one and the fourth one. On part B, we're going to cut out the second one and the fourth one and the sixth one. Gotta admit, I'm cutting it down a lot. And then we're going to continue our odds pattern. So we're going to cross off all of the evens here. We're just doing odds. When it was letters, I tried to cut it in half also. That keeps the assignment very doable. Let's do part A here. All they asked for me to do was stick f into the 5 function. Sorry, 5 into the f function. And 5 minus 2 is 3. That's it. Don't overthink it. Stick 5 into the f function. Here you got to do f of 1 first, and then times by -3. So don't overthink these. Just do the f part first, then go back and times by this. All right. That's all the advice that I have for you for today. That paper worksheet, in my dream world, you would take it home and study it, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I'm going to say, just finish up that basic 20 and then hand it to me on your way out the door. And I will record it as long as you got it done. I'm going to give you the answer key for it right now. And that's all we're going to do with that.